What if I told you that the most extraordinary power doesn't reside in weapons, wealth, or worldly authority, but in the unyielding spirit of a single individual? What if the greatest battles are not fought on blood-soaked fields, but within the depths of the human heart? And what if the most profound legacies are not etched in stone, but forged in the fires of unwavering faith? Our story today isn't about gods and monsters, though it has elements of both. It's about something far more relatable, far more human, yet no less extraordinary. It's about a young man named Elisha, plucked from obscurity, thrust into a world of divine power, and challenged to become something more than he ever thought possible. But this isn't just a tale of miracles and wonders, although it has those aplenty. It's a story about mentorship, legacy, and the daunting, exhilarating journey of discovering your true purpose, even when that purpose seems to defy all logic and reason. Imagine a young shepherd, Elisha, living a life far removed from the centers of power and influence. He wasn't a scholar, a warrior, or a politician. His days were spent amidst the quiet solitude of the hills, his companions the sheep under his care. Yet within him burned a fire, a deep-seated yearning for something more, a sense that his life held a purpose beyond the mundane. He felt like a wellspring, contained, limited, while sensing a vast ocean within him, waiting to break free. Have you ever felt that way? That unsettling feeling of being meant for something greater, something beyond the confines of your current reality? That's where we find Elisha, on the cusp of a transformation that will not only change his life, but also ripple through the lives of countless others. Destiny, it seems, has a way of finding us, even in the most unexpected places. And for Elisha, destiny arrived in the form of a man named Elijah, a prophet known throughout the land for his fiery spirit and unwavering devotion to God. Elijah was a force of nature, a man who spoke truth to power, who challenged kings, and who wielded the power of the divine with unparalleled authority. Their meeting was no accident. It was a divine appointment, a collision of two souls that would forever alter the course of their lives. Now put yourself in Elisha's shoes. You're a simple shepherd, your life defined by routine and solitude. Suddenly, a figure of immense spiritual power stands before you, his gaze piercing, his presence commanding. What do you do? Do you shrink back in fear? Do you question his purpose? Or do you, like Elisha, sense that this is a moment that could change everything? Elijah takes off his cloak and, in a swift, unexpected movement, throws it over Elisha's shoulders. Elisha is startled but doesn't resist. Elijah's act wasn't a random gesture. It was a symbolic transfer of anointing, a prophetic call to a life of service, a mantle of responsibility being passed from one generation to the next. But it was also a test, an invitation that demanded a response. It was as if Elijah was saying, "Here is the path. Will you take it, knowing it will demand everything you have and more?" This was not an offer of comfort or ease, but a call to a life of radical faith and extraordinary challenges. Elisha's world just turned upside down. He could have refused. He could have returned to his sheep, to the familiar rhythm of his old life. But something within him, that fire, that yearning, ignited. He recognized this moment for what it was, a turning point, a chance to embrace a destiny far greater than himself. He chose to accept the mantle, both literally and figuratively, to step into the unknown, to follow Elijah, and to embark on a journey that would test his faith, hone his character, and ultimately transform him into one of the most powerful prophets in history. But this journey wouldn't be easy. It would demand sacrifice, courage, and an unwavering commitment to a path shrouded in mystery. What cloaks are being offered to you in your life? What invitations to a greater purpose are you being presented with? And are you, like Elisha, willing to leave behind the familiar to embrace the extraordinary? Join us as we delve into the life of Elisha, the prophet's apprentice, and discover how a legacy forged in fire can illuminate our own paths even thousands of years later. This is not just a story from the past. It's a roadmap for anyone seeking to live a life of purpose, meaning, and unwavering faith. Elisha's apprenticeship with Elijah wasn't a walk in the park. It wasn't about instant power or easy miracles. It was about hard work, discipline, and learning to trust in a power beyond his own understanding. Imagine leaving everything you know behind to follow a demanding mentor into the unknown. That's precisely what Elisha did. He traded his shepherd's staff for a prophet's mantle, his quiet solitude for a life of constant challenge and spiritual warfare. One of the first lessons Elisha learned was the importance of humility. He wasn't there to be served, but to serve. He fetched water, prepared meals, and attended to Elijah's needs, all while observing, listening, and absorbing the wisdom of his mentor. Think of a young athlete joining a professional team. They might have been a star in their previous life, but now they're surrounded by seasoned veterans. They have to earn their place, prove their worth, and learn from those who have walked the path before them. They have to be willing to do the grunt work, to put in the hours, and to learn from their mistakes. Elisha too had to learn that true greatness often begins with humility and a willingness to serve. Elijah, however, was no coddling teacher. He was demanding, often cryptic, and always pushing Elisha to grow beyond his perceived limits. He understood that Elisha needed to be tested, to have his faith refined in the crucible of real-life challenges. One day, Elijah instructed Elisha to travel to a nearby village and deliver a message to a particular family. The message seemed simple enough, but the journey was arduous, and the family was known for their hostility towards prophets. Elisha faced his fear and doubt and completed the task, only to be met with rejection and ridicule. He returned to Elijah, dejected and questioning his abilities. Elijah listened patiently and then said, "The message was not for them, Elisha. It was for you. Did you trust in my words? Did you persevere despite the opposition? Did you learn that obedience to God is not always easy, but always necessary?" This wasn't just about delivering a message. It was about learning to trust in God's plan, even when it doesn't make sense. It was about developing resilience in the face of adversity and understanding that true growth often comes through challenges and setbacks. How often do we give up when faced with opposition or when things don't go our way? Elisha's experience teaches us that perseverance and trust are essential qualities on the path of faith. Another crucial lesson Elisha learned was the power of observation. He watched Elijah closely, not just his miraculous deeds, but also his daily habits, his way of interacting with people, his moments of prayer and solitude. He was learning not just what to do, but how to be. Consider a young writer learning from a master novelist. They don't just study the finished product. They observe the writer's process, their struggles with writer's block, their dedication to their craft, their way of seeing the world. They learn that writing is not just about stringing words together. It's about a way of life, a way of observing and interpreting the human experience. Elisha, too, was learning that being a prophet wasn't just about performing miracles. It was about a deep connection with God and a profound understanding of human nature. Elisha also had to confront his own inner demons. He had doubts, fears, and insecurities, just like anyone else. He questioned his own abilities, wondered if he was truly worthy of the calling, and struggled to reconcile the power he was witnessing with his own sense of inadequacy. One night, while Elijah was deep in prayer, Elisha found himself wrestling with doubt. He confided in a fellow apprentice, a young man named Gehazi, who was also training under Elijah. "How can I ever be like Elijah?" Elisha asked. "He's so powerful, so confident. I feel like a fraud, a pretender." Gehazi, ambitious but lacking true understanding, responded, "Perhaps you need to seize power for yourself, Elisha. Don't just wait for it to be given to you. Show Elijah, show everyone what you're capable of." This was a moment of temptation for Elisha. He could have chosen to follow Gehazi's advice, to try to force his own path, to seek power for his own glory. But he remembered Elijah's teachings about humility, about serving, about trusting in God's timing. He chose to reject Gehazi's counsel and to continue on the path of faithful apprenticeship. Elisha's journey continued, filled with trials that tested his faith and shaped his character. He learned to rely on God not only for miraculous interventions, but also for daily guidance, for wisdom in difficult situations, and for the strength to persevere in the face of adversity. Let's explore a few more of these formative experiences, drawing parallels to challenges we might face in our own lives. During a time of famine, Elijah and his followers, including Elisha and Gehazi, were struggling to find food. They managed to gather some wild herbs and make a stew, but unknowingly, they had included poisonous plants. As they began to eat, they realized something was wrong. Panic set in. Gehazi, always eager to prove himself, started suggesting drastic measures, even blaming Elisha for not being more discerning in gathering the herbs. Elijah, however, remained calm. He instructed Elisha to fetch some flour. Elisha, though confused, obeyed without question. Elijah then threw the flour into the stew, and miraculously the stew became safe to eat. This incident teaches us several things. First, it highlights the importance of remaining calm under pressure. While others panicked, Elijah maintained his composure and sought a solution through faith. Second, it demonstrates the power of simple obedience. Elisha didn't understand why flour would fix the problem, but he trusted Elijah and obeyed. Third, it shows that God can use even the simplest of things to bring about miraculous results. Think of a team facing a major crisis at work. A project is failing, deadlines are looming, and tensions are high. A leader who panics will only make things worse, but a leader who remains calm, who listens to their team, and who seeks solutions through collaboration and trust, can often turn the situation around. Just like the flour in the stew, sometimes the simplest solutions, combined with faith and obedience, can have the most profound impact. Elisha encountered a woman on the brink of despair. Her husband had died, leaving her with nothing but debt. Her creditors were threatening to take her 2 sons as slaves. She came to Elisha, desperate for help. This time, however, Elisha wasn't just an observer. He was the one empowered to act. He asked the woman what she had in her house. She replied that she had nothing but a small jar of oil. Elisha instructed her to borrow as many empty jars as she could from her neighbors. Then he told her to go into her house with her sons, close the door, and pour the oil from her jar into the empty ones. The woman, though perhaps skeptical, obeyed. As she poured, the oil miraculously multiplied, filling every jar she had borrowed. She was able to sell the oil, pay off her debts, and live off the remainder with her sons. This story is not merely about financial provision, it's about the power of faith in action. The woman had to take a step of faith, borrowing the jars and pouring the oil, even though it seemed illogical. She had to trust that Elisha, as a man of God, was speaking truth to her. This miracle also demonstrates that God can use what little we have and multiply it beyond our expectations. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt like you had nothing to offer? Perhaps you were facing a challenge that seemed too big, or you felt like you lacked the resources or skills to make a difference. This story reminds us that even when we feel inadequate, God can use what little we have and transform it into something extraordinary. We just need to be willing to take that step of faith and trust in His provision. Word of Elisha's growing reputation as a powerful prophet reached the ears of Naaman, a respected military commander from a neighboring country. Naaman, however, suffered from a debilitating skin disease. He traveled to Israel seeking a cure from Elisha. Now Naaman expected a grand display of power, a dramatic healing ritual. But Elisha didn't even come out to meet him. Instead, he sent a messenger with instructions for Naaman to wash himself 7 times in the Jordan River. Naaman was initially furious. He considered the Jordan a lowly river compared to the rivers in his own country. He almost turned away, refusing to follow such a seemingly ridiculous command. But his servants urged him to reconsider, pointing out that he would have readily obeyed if Elisha had asked him to do something difficult. Naaman, swallowing his pride, humbled himself and obeyed. He dipped himself in the Jordan 7 times, and his skin was completely healed. This story highlights the importance of humility and obedience, even when we don't understand the reasons behind a command. Naaman had to overcome his pride and his preconceived notions of how a healing should occur. He had to trust in Elisha's words, even though they seemed counterintuitive. Think of a time when you were given advice that you initially resisted. Perhaps it was from a mentor, a teacher, or a friend. You might have thought you knew better, or you might have been unwilling to change your approach. But later you realized that the advice was sound, and that by following it, you achieved a positive outcome. Naaman's story reminds us that sometimes the greatest breakthroughs come when we're willing to humble ourselves, to listen to others, and to obey even when we don't fully understand. Throughout his journey, Elisha continued to learn and grow. not only in his prophetic abilities, but also in his character. He faced numerous challenges, each one shaping him, refining his faith, and preparing him for the moment when he would fully inherit Elijah's mantle. As Elijah's ministry was drawing to a close, he sensed that his time on earth was nearing its end. Wanting to spare Elisha the pain of witnessing his departure, he tried to dissuade him from following him on his final journey. "Stay here," Elijah said, "for the Lord has sent me on to Bethel." But Elisha, steadfast in his loyalty and sensing the gravity of the situation, replied, "As surely as the Lord lives and as you live, I will not leave you." They journeyed together, and at each stop, Bethel, Jericho, and finally the Jordan River, Elijah repeated his request for Elisha to stay behind. And each time, Elisha firmly refused. He knew, perhaps intuitively, that something momentous was about to happen. This persistent loyalty of Elisha is a powerful testament to the depth of his commitment to his mentor and his understanding of the significance of this final journey. It wasn't blind obedience, it was a conscious choice to remain faithful, even when it would have been easier to turn away. It shows a remarkable level of spiritual maturity and an intuitive grasp of the unfolding divine plan. Think of a close friend or family member going through a difficult time. They might try to push you away, to spare you from their pain. But true loyalty means staying by their side, even when it's hard, even when they try to discourage you. It means being present, offering support, and demonstrating your unwavering commitment to them no matter what. Finally, they reached the Jordan River. Elijah took his cloak, rolled it up, and struck the water. The river parted just as it had for Moses centuries before, and they crossed over on dry ground. As they walked, Elijah, knowing his time had come, turned to Elisha and asked, "Tell me, what can I do for you before I am taken from you?" Elisha, having witnessed Elijah's unwavering faith and extraordinary power, made a bold request. "Let me inherit a double portion of your spirit," he said. Elijah responded, "You have asked a difficult thing. Yet if you see me when I am taken from you, it will be yours. Otherwise it will not." And then as they were walking along and talking together, suddenly a chariot of fire and horses of fire appeared and separated the two of them, and Elijah went up to heaven in a whirlwind. Elisha saw this and cried out, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel," and he saw him no more. This is the culmination of Elisha's apprenticeship, the dramatic climax of their shared journey. The fiery chariot, the whirlwind, these are powerful symbols of divine power and the transition from earthly to heavenly realms. Elisha's cry, my father," is a poignant expression of grief, but also of recognition. He acknowledges Elijah as his spiritual father and recognizes the immense power that has now been passed on to him. Then Elisha took hold of his own clothes and tore them apart. He picked up the cloak that had fallen from Elijah and went back to the Jordan. He stood at the bank and struck the water with the cloak. "Where now is the Lord, the God of Elijah?" he asked. When he struck the water, it divided to the right and to the left, and he crossed over. The company of the prophets from Jericho, who were watching, said, "The spirit of Elijah is resting on Elisha." And they went to meet him and bowed to the ground before him. This is the pivotal moment. Elisha, having witnessed Elijah's departure, is now tasked with carrying on his legacy. His act of striking the water with Elijah's cloak is not just a symbolic gesture, it's a test of faith. He's asking, is the power that was with Elijah now with me? And the answer is a resounding yes. The parting of the Jordan confirms that Elisha has indeed inherited Elijah's spirit, that he is now the designated successor, empowered to continue the work. The recognition from the company of the prophets further validates Elisha's new role. They see the power of God resting upon him and acknowledge his authority. This is the beginning of Elisha's own ministry, a ministry that will be marked by even more miracles than those performed by Elijah. Elisha's ministry was characterized by a remarkable display of divine power, but it was also deeply rooted in compassion and concern for the needs of the people. He wasn't just performing miracles for the sake of spectacle, he was using his gifts to serve, to heal, and to restore. Let's look at a few examples that highlight the breadth and depth of his ministry. The people of Jericho came to Elisha with a problem. Their water source was contaminated, causing sickness and barrenness in the land. This was a serious issue, affecting their very survival. Elisha, recognizing the urgency of the situation, asked for a new bowl and some salt. He went to the spring and threw the salt into the water, declaring, "This is what the Lord says. I have healed this water. Never again will it cause death or make the land unproductive." And the water was purified, just as Elisha had said. This miracle, while seemingly simple, had a profound impact on the community. It wasn't just about providing clean water, it was about restoring life and prosperity to the land. It demonstrated that God cared about the practical needs of his people and that Elisha was empowered to bring about tangible change. This wasn't just a physical healing, it was a symbolic cleansing, a restoration of hope, and a promise of a better future. Imagine an environmental crisis affecting a community, a polluted river, contaminated soil, or a lack of access to clean water. This miracle reminds us that we have a responsibility to care for the environment and to address issues that threaten the well-being of our communities. It also highlights the power of collective action and the importance of seeking solutions that bring about lasting change. A widow, burdened by debt and facing the threat of losing her children to slavery, came to Elisha for help. She had nothing left but a small jar of oil. Elisha, moved with compassion, instructed her to borrow empty jars from her neighbors, as many as she could find. Then he told her to pour the oil from her jar into the empty ones. As she poured, a miracle unfolded. The oil continued to flow, filling every jar she had borrowed. She had enough oil to sell, pay off her debts, and provide for her family. This story is a powerful illustration of God's provision in times of need. It's not just about material wealth, it's about the restoration of dignity, the preservation of family, and the overcoming of seemingly insurmountable obstacles. The widow's act of faith, in borrowing the jars and pouring the oil, was essential to the miracle. She had to participate in the process, to trust in Elisha's words, and to take a step of faith even when it seemed illogical. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by debt or financial hardship? This story reminds us that even in the most desperate situations, there is hope. It encourages us to trust in God's provision, to take practical steps, and to believe that even the smallest resources can be multiplied when placed in his hands. A woman from Shunammite, known for her hospitality, had shown great kindness to Elisha, providing him with a room and regular meals. Elisha, grateful for her generosity, wanted to bless her in return. He learned that she was childless and that her husband was old. Elisha prophesied that she would have a son, and indeed, a year later, she gave birth to a boy. Years later, the boy became ill and suddenly died. The Shunammite woman, heartbroken but not defeated, immediately set out to find Elisha. She believed that the same God who had given her a son could also restore him to life. When she found Elisha, she fell at his feet, pleading for his help. Elisha, moved by her faith, went to her house and prayed over the boy. He stretched himself out on the boy, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. The boy's body grew warm, and he sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. He was alive. This is one of the most powerful and moving miracles in the entire Bible. It demonstrates the power of persistent faith, even in the face of death. The Shunammite woman didn't give up hope, even when her son was pronounced dead. She sought out Elisha, believing that God could work through him to bring her son back to life. This miracle also highlights the depth of Elisha's compassion and his connection with the divine. He wasn't just performing a ritual, he was deeply invested in the outcome, pouring his heart and soul into the prayer for the boy's resurrection. This story reminds me of the incredible resilience of the human spirit, particularly the unwavering love of a parent for a child. It speaks to the power of hope, the importance of seeking help in times of need, and the belief that even in the darkest of circumstances, miracles can happen. Elisha's ministry continued for many years, marked by numerous miracles, prophetic pronouncements, and acts of service. He advised kings, guided the nation of Israel through times of war and famine, and continued to train up a new generation of prophets. But his legacy extends far beyond the miracles he performed. He demonstrated the power of a life fully surrendered to God, a life characterized by humility, obedience, compassion, and unwavering faith. He showed that true greatness lies not in power or prestige, but in serving others and being a channel for divine grace. Elisha's story also highlights the importance of mentorship and the power of passing on a legacy. Elijah's investment in Elisha's life transformed a simple shepherd into a powerful prophet. And Elisha, in turn, trained and mentored others, ensuring that the work of God would continue long after he was gone. So what can we learn from Elisha's life? How can we apply these lessons to our own journeys? First, we are called to embrace our own mantles, whatever they may be. We all have unique gifts, talents, and callings. Like Elisha, we must be willing to step out in faith, to leave behind the familiar, and to embrace the unknown. Second, we must cultivate humility, obedience, and a servant's heart. True greatness lies not in self-promotion, but in serving others and using our gifts to make a difference in the world. Third, we must learn to trust in God's provision, even in the face of adversity. Like the widow with the oil, we must believe that God can multiply our resources and provide for our needs, even when it seems impossible. Fourth, we must never give up hope, even in the darkest of times. Like the Shunammite woman, we must hold on to faith, believing that God can work miracles even in the face of death itself. Finally, we must invest in the lives of others, mentoring, guiding, and empowering the next generation. Like Elijah, we have a responsibility to pass on the torch, to ensure that the work of God continues long after we are gone. The story of Elisha is not just a relic of the past, it's a living testament to the power of faith, the importance of mentorship, and the enduring impact of a life lived in service to God and others. May his story inspire you to embrace your own calling, to walk in faith, and to leave a legacy that will impact generations to come. May your faith be strengthened, and may you walk in the footsteps of those who, like Elisha, dared to believe that with God, all things are possible.